it's 11:30. I'll go ahead and get started. So yeah, everyone. Raquel Blackinishe, Kiani Nishlan, Sanjikine Basichin, Ashinhe Dasuche Ado Torjini Dashanale. I am a member of the Navajo Nation from Shanto, Arizona, and I'm also the co-working manager for here at Change Labs. So thank you all for taking your time to be here with us today. First off, I'm going to give a brief introduction to Change Labs for those who aren't already familiar with our organization. Officially, we are a Native-led and Native-controlled nonprofit organization based on the Navajo and Hopi reservations. Here at Change Labs, our goal and mission is to provide creative workspace, tools, resources, and knowledge for Native entrepreneurs. How we accomplish our goals and mission is through our different programs. We have the co-working program, our business incubator program, and coming soon is our doing business, and our kinship lending program, I'm sorry. And here we have our mighty team that helped make Change Labs the great organization that it is today. We have our executive director and our incubator coach and venture fund manager, Heather Fleming and Jessica Stago, who also happen to be Change Labs co-founders. And then for our incubator director, we have Cecilia So, and her team member is Holly Patterson. We have our director of our kinship lending, Christine Laughter, and her colleague helping to run the kinship lending program is Swabosky Little. And then we have our different coaches, Joe Elliott Nez and Tim Deal. And we have Marsha Gray Eyes, she's our finance director. And then myself, I am the co-working manager. To talk a little bit about the co-working program, we do have construction underway on our new headquarters, which will be located right next to Tuba City Chapter House on Main Street. For those of you who may not be familiar with what a co-working space is, it's a community space for business owners and entrepreneurs to use to help operate and manage your business. This space in particular will serve our Native entrepreneurs and small business owners, especially those based on the Navajo and Hopi nations in the Four Corners area. So later this year, we will have a brand new co-working space available for you to use. And some of our services that we'll be able to offer are some tools that could be useful to your business. Tools such as desk-based, Wi-Fi access, color printing, in-person coaching. We also have a Cricut machine for entrepreneurs to test out if you're interested in investing in a Cricut machine. We also have a button making machine that we can train you with to create your buttons for your business. And then our list of co-working services is constantly being updated as far as how we support our local entrepreneurs and business owners there at the new headquarters. And we're always open to new ideas on how we can better serve our local community. If you have any ideas on how this co-working space can benefit your business, definitely let us know. We're open to that. We're really excited to bring this community space for everyone to help with building and growing your business. So please stay tuned for more information to come as our construction gets closer and closer to completion, which should be very soon. Fingers crossed. Moving along, one of our most popular questions that we get here at Change Labs is, how do I start a business? All of our programs and services here are designed to help Native entrepreneurs, our artisans, our local vendors, and those we like to call change makers, because that's what our local business owners and entrepreneurs are. You're change makers. So if you're a Native entrepreneur or a small business owner yourself, please know that you're absolutely crucial to our local economies, and Change Labs is here to help you with both starting up and strengthening your businesses. Now, for a brief overview of our business incubator program, it is one of the only Native-led business incubators for Native entrepreneurs in this country. And we're right here on the Navajo Nation on the border of the Hopi Nation, which is really cool. This program is led by our Director of Business Incubation, Cecilia So. I believe she's online with us today. Good morning, Cecilia. And starting this year, it is a 6-month program for Native entrepreneurs who want support and training on how to start and operate your business. If you're interested and would like assistance with things like your logo, your website design, or how to set up your bookkeeping and maintain your finances, please visit our website for more information here at nativestartup.org/incubator. Next is another great question that we get often is, how do I get help running my business? So there are many aspects of being an entrepreneur, and the answer may not, or solution may not always be obvious for you or any of us. Here at Change Labs, one of our driving factors is kinship. building relationships among our communities and nations, which is really a solid foundation for all of our cohort members. And how Change Lab can help here is through our business coaching appointments. We offer free virtual 90-minute appointments with any of our business coaches. Our coaches are available on Mondays from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And they each have their own area of expertise depending on the kind of support you're looking for. We have a team of very, very bright and eager coaches who are each incredibly knowledgeable in their own specialties and will be able to assist you in the areas that you're needing help with your business. The coaches are able to assist you in areas from marketing to accounting and bookkeeping systems, or if you're just starting out, they can assist you with creating a business model and navigating the Navajo Nation system for things such as your business site lease and registering with the Navajo Nation Business Regulatory. This coming Monday, we have Coach Holly, who can assist you with things like brand development, market analysis, social media marketing, and business registration with New Mexico. Even that one is really, really cool. And a lot more. She's very, very bright, and she's more than happy to answer any of your questions that you have for her. So please, check our site out at nativestartup.org/events, where you can find more information. You can book your appointment with Coach Holly or any of our other coaches. Just make sure you note which dates are available. And then another common question we get here at Change Labs is, how do I create a website? Until Change Lab can go back to opening in-person studios at our headquarters in Tuba City, I will refer you to our YouTube channel. We currently have over 50 recorded sessions and discussions, each designed for Native business owners and all led by Native entrepreneurs and creatives, and then others that are in our network. We have workshops that have covered topics like social media marketing, website design, doing business on the Navajo Nation, and a lot more. It's a growing archive of shared knowledge and from other Natives who really just want to see our Native people and their businesses thrive. To access any of our past sessions and our listings of resources as well, such as grants and other informational events, I'll refer you to our link here, nativestartup.org/resources. And we do update this page pretty regularly, so be sure to check back every now and then for upcoming opportunities. Another great resource we have are our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I do recommend you check those pages out as well for our postings. We do like to post and share other posts from our network members and those in our that we partner with for resources and opportunities that we think would be of value for you as well as a business owner and an entrepreneur. And lastly, there is a whole spectrum of who we consider Native entrepreneurs, and we here at Change Labs have been curating our own list of them. If you're in the market for finding other Native service providers who can help you with your business, we currently have over 600 Native businesses listed in there, and that we think are really, really great resources for helping you to start up and run your business. Or maybe you're searching for some Native-made products. You can visit the site here as well. It's resrising.org. And then if you are a Native business or service provider yourself, and you have products that you want to promote and services you want to promote, feel free to add yourself to the listing here. It's free and it's a fairly simple process. And then if you have any questions about anything Change Labs has to offer, or if you're interested in any of our appointments and you would like to know where to start, feel free to email me. My direct email is raquel@nativestartup.org, or you can visit our website at nativestartup.org. All right. And now before we start with our guests for today, I want to touch base on our workshop etiquette and how we can be respectful of our guest time today. We do ask that you stay on mute during the presentation unless you're called upon, and then feel free to populate the chat box or raise your hand, your little virtual hand, if you have any questions that come up, and then we'll make sure to try to get to them before we end our session today. And then a reminder, our session is being recorded today and will be available on Change Lab YouTube channel later this week. All right, and now introducing our guest today. For today, we have Jordanna Saunders. Jordanna is Diné and grew up in New Mexico on the Navajo reservation. She's a sometime runner, sometime mom, artist, mentor, writer, trainer, and trauma counselor. Jordanna is a social entrepreneur and owns and operates Trauma Recovery Services of Arizona, a telehealth-based group counseling practice that serves ages 13 and up in the state of Arizona. The practice specializes in the use of technology to deliver EDMR therapy, which is a cutting edge treatment recognized by the World Health Organization, the APA, and the VA. TRSA staff use EDMR to treat PTSD, depression, anxiety, and other complex mental health concerns. And she believes that community wellness begins one person at a time, one healed person at a time. So thank you so much for being here, Jordanna. I'm going to turn the time over to you.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I just really want to thank you and thank Change Labs for giving me this opportunity and asking me to do this. I really was super excited. I get asked to do things and sometimes they're a little bit more challenging, but for me, this was one of the ones that was an easy yes to say, just because I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. I get to talk about my jam, the thing that I do. I get to talk about mental health and I get to talk about, how we can improve our mental health. So I made us a little PowerPoint and I'm just going to kind of run through it. And, if at any time, like Raquel said, if you have questions or, you want to interact, please use the chat. I'm totally open to that. I feel like that's a great way for us to sort of be in community together here, but also for us to make this really applicable to you all. So this is the topic we're going to go over today, just resilience, mental health, how we go from surviving to thriving. Again, I am a social entrepreneur. I started my business about 6 years ago, and it transitioned from a solo practice to a group practice. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how and why I did that here a few years ago. So just a little bit more about me. I'm originally from Crown Point, New Mexico. I am Navajo. My clans are Tlethni, Nishlin, Twitchitni, Bashichin, Maedishkijni, Dashiche, and Twabajna Aja, Dashanele. So I am a mom. I also make art in my free time, and I call myself a sometime runner because I love running. And it's like we have this on-off again relationship, which is like good and strenuous at times. So there's just a little bit more information about me there. This information is on our website if you're ever interested in learning more about like how I got to where I am today. That's all there too. So workshop summary. So I think it's important to kind of start and just go over, what we're working on today and sort of where we're hoping to go. So as entrepreneurs, there's a lot of opportunities that come with that. We have a lot of flexibility, but we also have a lot of responsibility. So in order for us to be successful as leaders, we also have to be deliberate in cultivating resilience. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, cover some of the foundations of mental health, provide some education, some tips, some actionable items, and really hopefully just to get you all kind of thinking critically about what your own roadmap for wellness looks like and where are maybe some areas that you can start to make small improvements that will lead to big wins later on. The learning objectives, again, just review some of the foundations. I'm also going to give some definitions of Indigenous entrepreneurship, because I think we also have a responsibility to educate other folks about who we are, what we do, and why we do it. So that's important to me too. And then again, for you all to begin to cultivate your own kind of roadmap and look at what might these things look like for me? What are some things that I can use to make some decisions to move forward? So a little bit about my business again. So we specialize in mental health. Like I said, I grew up on the Navajo reservation. My experience there really, I think, kind of formed my interest in mental health. Growing up in a tribal community, my community was very deeply impacted by genocide and systemic historical trauma. And so I experienced a lot of things that I believe, really were difficult. And so I thought a lot about how reconciliation is important and implementing appropriate care. And so I think that's kind of like was part of the evolution of my journey from being growing up there on the reservation and then ultimately deciding to become an entrepreneur. So I'm just going to go back through really quick so you can kind of see what I was talking about. Cover info about me on the site, workshop summary, and then this is where I was. So this was my playground when I was a kid. You know, when I tell people and I sort of describe where I grew up, they're always surprised. You know, I live in the city now, and, you know, the world is so different from when I was a kid. My son and my nephew, they're like totally plugged into the internet. This morning, my son was like doing Snapchats while he was walking our dog. And it's just such a different world. You know, it's such a different space and a different place. And I think it's important to kind of acknowledge that, but also to understand that some of the things that really have impacted me come from being here. So this was like my playground, you know, behind my mom's house in Crown Point. I wanted to start this conversation with really a little bit of information about how I became an entrepreneur. Early on, like I said, it was very stereotypical. I decided to go into private practice, and it was just, it was me and a couch. And I was working here in the suburbs, and, you know, people were coming in for counseling. But my life, like I imagine a lot of our lives, changed really drastically during the pandemic. This is my nephew. And my nephew ended up coming to live with me for a couple of years because he lost both of his parents. So in a really short amount of time, I went from being self-employed, a solo entrepreneur, to having a small child and making a lot of really quick decisions about how am I going to keep doing the work that I've started to do, but do it in a way that also allows for me to be present, help my family, and help my nephew. And at the time, my business mentor had been encouraging me to expand the business. And that was a really hard decision for me because I was like, oh no, I think I'll be okay. It's just me, you know, everything's going good. But when I got my nephew, I very quickly had to make a transition. And so then from there, I went from being, you know, a business of one to hiring contractors, ultimately hiring employees, and then deciding to take on the expansion. We're still like in a growth phase, but that was really like the precipitating event for me. And as I've talked to other Indigenous entrepreneurs, the communication that we have is that a lot of times we decide to become entrepreneurs out of necessity. And so I think that's really important to highlight, is that, you know, there's things that propel us to begin this journey and this experience. And it's not always like we set out saying, oh my gosh, I can't wait to be the CEO of my company one day. It's more like, how am I going to get my needs met? How am I going to support my family? You know, and what are the gifts that I have that I can share with others? He is back with my parents on the reservation, and he's doing really well. And I'm looking forward to seeing him on spring break, but he's such a sweet kid. And so again, I thought a visual would be helpful. As entrepreneurs, you know, we always start off in the middle with our like comfort zone here. You know, we feel safe there, we feel in control. That was definitely what it was like for me. I felt really safe, you know, with my solo practice. I knew what I was doing. Things were relatively certain. And then I very quickly moved from there to that next circle, which was, you know, the uncertainty. You know, my business mentor saying, you know, you should add more people to the practice. You know, it would be good. You could help more people. You could do more things. And then once I did make that decision, it was going from sort of that fear zone into the learning zone. And I think that's really where, in all of these zones, is where Change Lab kind of comes in, you know, and I love that they provide that hands-on tactical support, because a lot of times it's like, well, how do I do this? How do I do marketing? How do I promote myself? You know, what kind of things do I need to take care of? And then that last phase is really that growth zone, which is where we're able to, you know, acclimate all of the other stages that we've gone through to get there, from that original place in space to, you know, living out those dreams that we have and finding our purpose as an entrepreneur. We're going to transition a little bit, talk a little bit about what mental health is. I've got a little definition here for us, and so it includes a lot of different things. It includes our emotional, our psychological, and our social well-being. And it really affects all of the major areas of our life. I think mental health is one of those things that really sadly still gets overlooked, which is always surprising to me, because I'm like, well, how can we talk about health and not talk about how we feel, how we think, and then how we're acting in response to things that are happening. So I think that, mental health is really pivotal, and I feel like it's one of the most important pieces of health. And it's something that's important at every stage of life: childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and elderhood. And there's a lot of things that can influence your mental health, biological factors, where you live, what experiences you've had, what experiences your family has had, what experiences your community's had, and whether your other family members have had experience with mental health problems. Since we're talking about Indigenous entrepreneurship and we're talking about resilience, it's really important also to highlight historical trauma. We are the modern survivors of genocidal practices. And some of us argue that some of those practices are still continuing. So it's not like they just all of a sudden stopped. But I think it's important to kind of highlight that and to acknowledge it for what it is, and to also take that into consideration when we're looking at things from a bigger context. Mental health is helpful to conceptualize on a continuum. And so if you think about that, like I was just saying, there's all those components of mental health. On one side, you have mental health, and in the middle, you have mental health issues. So, if things are becoming taxing or stressful, that's where we start to notice things are a little bit more difficult. Maybe our interactions with our friends, our family, or even our ability to work can change. And then maybe we're looking at, mental, I don't like to call it mental illness, but I like to call it like mental distress, things that are affecting our ability to function. And so that's really what counselors specialize in, is addressing those things. But we also deal with prevention and education to help people optimize how they're doing, how they're functioning, and what's happening with them. The other thing I really wanted to kind of touch on is sort of this thing that has come up a few times, especially when I'm talking to Indigenous communities, is this sort of myth of we can't talk about these things. We can't talk about mental or behavioral health. We're supposed to keep our problems to ourselves. We're supposed to be strong. And we're not supposed to talk about the things that have happened, or even sometimes we're told we're just supposed to move on. And so I wanted to spend a few minutes kind of talking about that and where that sort of comes from. And so, I mentioned earlier a little bit about historical trauma. If you think about the evolution of our communities, really our communities, a lot of our communities got placed where they are because of, the federal government and because of decisions that were made prior to us. And at that time, one of the things that I learned is that it was very common for people to lose, family, friends, homes, all of the things that really are fundamental to health and well-being. And so one of the ways that we learned how to cope with that was by not speaking about it. We were told that if we didn't speak about it, then we were not inviting problems or trouble into our life. And when you think about that, that's really a coping skill. And we see that commonly with PTSD, where people will avoid. It's an avoidance. We're going to avoid the things that remind us of the thing that happened before. But in reality, that doesn't really help us to deal with the things that we have experienced or are experiencing. Transitions are a natural part of life. If you think about our communities and how we have functioned over, millennia, we're seasonally based communities, right? And we understand that things change. Right now in the valley, it's raining, it's windy, it's been snowing back home a lot. I saw even NAU was canceling their classes for today. And so, taking that and looking at it from that position, I think can sometimes be helpful in terms of understanding that, that are going to have reactions to things that happen to us, as well as things that have happened in the past. And that by avoiding it or thinking that there's something wrong with us, if we don't address it, we're really not going to see things improve. Getting into some of the foundations of mental health, I really wanted to kind of emphasize that there are 4 pillars that really, when we first start working with someone, these are the areas that we kind of look at. And these are areas that are, things that we can begin to improve. So the first one is sleep. And so I just want us to kind of take a moment and sort of self-reflect, like, how did you all sleep last night? If you got a great night's sleep, maybe you could just send me like a heart or a thumbs up. I'm just curious about, how you all experienced your night. Okay, so I see 1 thumbs up. I see 2. I see a heart. I see another heart. Okay. So now for everyone else, 2 hearts. Yeah. I'm wondering, what it was that contributed to maybe not getting great sleep. Was it something that, maybe you were busy, maybe there was a deadline, or, was there a sick child, things like that. So was it something that was outside of your control, or was it other things, that maybe came up? But when you look at your sleep is really fundamental, because sleep is like a restorative function. We have to have sleep in order to do the things that we need to do. The better quality of sleep and the more we're able to get a good night's sleep, the more likely we are to have energy, feel rejuvenated, and be successful over time. So sleep is like one of those fundamental things. The other one is physical activity. I know it's cold right now, so that can be a challenge, but there's other things that we could do to increase that. The third one is healthy nutrition. And that one is always one that we're looking at, like fueling, like how are we fueling our body? What kinds of things are we doing? And then the one that I spend a lot of my time working on with my clients, with my friends, and myself, really is the last one, which is the stress management routine. How do we manage the things that are coming into our lives? And how do we really cultivate resilience so that we're able to deal with the things that are stressful? We're able to deal with the things that are coming up. I know when Raquel and I were talking about this presentation, one of the things we talked about was tax time, right? Like how stressful that is to think about, oh my gosh, taxes are coming due soon. What am I going to do? How am I going to manage that? And so thinking about that, if it's something that we know is coming, then, one of the things we also want to do is begin to lean on our own resources to identify ways that we can put into place some kind of a system to help us deal with that. Because a lot of times there are going to be things that we can plan for, and then there's also going to be things that we can't plan for. So like the example I gave of like a sick child, right? I don't know about you all, but my kid always gets sick when I have a lot going on. And so then I'm like always trying to reshuffle, and I'm like, okay, what do I need to do now? And who do I need to call? And where do I need to go? And what do I need to do? And do I need to take him to urgent care? And so sometimes that can be like, that's a good example of an unpredictable, stressor. And then also making sure that he's going to be okay and moving forward from there. There's a roadmap we're going to talk a little bit more about. And so what I did is I just kind of took, historical knowledge of 20 years in mental health, and also 43 years as a human being and 6 years as an entrepreneur, and just kind of sat back and looked and said, okay, what are the things that really are essential and helpful as far as, resilience for entrepreneurs. And so I kind of created a little list. And this is kind of the template for what we're working on today. And so the first one is, encouraging you all to actively cultivate resilience. I'm going to give you a definition of resilience, and we're going to talk a little bit more about its benefits. Number two, which I think sometimes gets missed in the big picture, is remembering your why, remembering why you decided to do what you did. Number three is remembering who you are, that your values shape your work, that the way that you approach your work and do your work is fundamentally different from the way other people approach their work. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Indigenous entrepreneurship and how that might differ a little bit from other kinds of entrepreneurship. Number four, knowing that you're not alone. We're all here together collectively. And anytime that we can be in any time of community, whether it's virtually or in person, knowing that we're not going through this by ourselves. Number five is the recognition and acknowledgement that innovation is complex, that a lot of the things that we're doing are complicated and potentially haven't been done before. Number six is that there are going to be barriers. But what's important is that we focus on overcoming them, because as leaders, we're always going to face challenges. Challenges are interconnected to innovation and opportunity. We're going to have to figure out ways to do things that other people might not have to figure out, but knowing that as leaders, that this is something that we can do and that we can rely on other people to help us facilitate that. Seven is that entrepreneurship is a process. I kind of showed you that little circular image early on. It really is a process, and sometimes you go back and forth. Like it's not linear. It's cyclic. Like right now I'm working on expanding parts of my business, and I'm bringing on contractors to help me with pieces of it that are outside of my wheelhouse. And so knowing like when to do that is something that I've learned on the job over time, where I've said, okay, what's the cost benefit ratio? Does it make sense for me to try to learn how to do this very complicated thing? For example, like I'm trying to figure out how to do payroll for my contractors because I have so many contractors now that I was doing it manually. And now I need to make the transition. And so I have someone that is an expert in payroll, and they're going to come on and help me figure that out, look at my business, how my business works, and figure out ways to automate that so that it's not as time consuming, because there is only one me. And so I also need to be mindful of that, because I'm trying to grow the business. And the only way to grow the business sometimes is to step back, create systems, try them, see if it's working, and go back in and look at it again. So it really is a process, and it's a dynamic process that takes time, takes commitment, takes energy. But as a human, we also need to cultivate our own energy, and we also need to cultivate our own care. We need to care for our bodies. We need to care for our mental health. And then number 8, strategic planning is essential. So, we have to look at things. And some people might say, well, we're not historically planners. And I will say, yes, we are. Navajo people come from amazing planners. I mean, if you think about weaving, for example, there's a whole process that goes into weaving, right? We have to get the wool. We have to clean the wool. We have to dye the wool. We have to spin the wool. Then we have to warp our looms, and we have to come up with the design. And so that's strategic planning. Strategic planning is something where you look at something and you see the end, and you have to go through it all and go step by step by step by step. And so it's the same thing with looking at cultivating resilience and moving really from this sense of survival, where I'm reacting to things and just getting the bare minimum done, to I'm going to figure out ways to make my daily functioning better so that I can start to thrive and be successful with where I am, and, and really achieve the things that are important, because Indigenous entrepreneurs really are the backbones of our communities. You're going to see the slide more than once. I'm a big believer that repetition is good. That was one of my first study skills, was flashcards, right? Do you guys remember that? That's like old school. I think they have digital ones now. Again, definitions, because I love definitions. So resilience is really about getting through the pain, disappointment, and heartbreak in life without letting those things crush your spirit. And the research, the science behind it says that, we really can get through things, and that there are skills and attitudes that we use to overcome all of these things. And when you're an entrepreneur, you're going to experience those things. You're going to experience difficulties. You're going to experience challenges. You're going to also experience opportunities, but also being realistic about it. That, the things that you're working on are going to require you to innovate. And so as Indigenous entrepreneurs, one of the things that really makes us different from other entrepreneurs is we draw value from community-based resources. And so that picture I showed you early on, like of my backyard, is something that I always kind of conceptualize is, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I doing the work that I'm doing? And what is it that leads me back to the decisions that I make? And so for me, it's all about value. Like, how do I value people? How do I create opportunities for people to be successful when they come in contact with my business, when they come in contact with my employees and my contractors? And really just doing that from that space and place, and contributing back in some way, And so for us, it's about building that community. Raquel early on talked about, and that sense of like connection to others. And so that's really one of the key indicators, I think, that differentiates Indigenous entrepreneurship from other kinds of entrepreneurship. There's that slide again. I told you, you're going to keep seeing it, sneaking it in there. And I just kind of want to check the time really quick. Oh, good. We still have lots of time. So, creation and management of new ventures by us for the benefit of our people. And there's a lot of reasons that we go into entrepreneurship. I mean, I think probably if we were to take a survey of everybody today, everybody would have a different reason for why they started their business, what their motivation is, and what their goals are. But one of the things that does differentiate us is a lot of times Indigenous entrepreneurs engage in wealth distribution. So we share back with our communities the things that we've learned, our income, our resources. We're not usually in business to attain separation from others, but really we're doing it to create a connection. So it's more circular and less pyramid-y, if that makes sense. I also wanted to kind of just go over a little bit of leadership competencies. This is just nice stuff to have. I was able to work with ASU last year as part of their Indigenous Leadership Academy. And these are some of the competencies that we talked about and learned in depth about. And again, just focusing back on that resilience, right? That we have to create these systems and these opportunities for ourselves to really just lean into our own ability to cope with challenges, to meet goals, and understand that we do have to plan for the future, because future planning is inherent in the process of leadership, and so when we do establish systems, like the example I gave you about how right now I'm working on creating a solution to payroll for a specific group of folks that I employ, really my goal is to look towards sustainability, and looking at how do I make this specific to my business, and how do I make this something that is a bit more automated and is less labor intensive for me or for other administrators in my practice, so that as we're growing and expanding, this is something that will just be something that's part of the process versus something that I'm spending 2, 3, 4, or 5 hours calculating every couple of weeks. There's my slide again. Just a little bit of information about how, we do social innovation. You guys already know this. And I also just wanted to kind of touch very smallly on the fact that we do face barriers, and and that we often run into things that other people don't run into. We run into a lack of resources, we run into challenges around how we do the work we do, where we do the work we do, and finding people who are able to help us do the work that we're doing, as well as, inequitable structures. And there are a lot of people right now who are doing a lot of heavy lifting for us to begin to create better pathways for success for Indigenous entrepreneurs. But it is important to acknowledge that we do have barriers. And the other thing I really wanted to say here to you all is just a reminder, that we're building, creating, managing, and amplifying spaces, places, situations, and systems. And in a lot of regards, we're doing things that have never been done before. So we're paving the way for our future, for our children, for our friends, for our neighbors, for our cousins, really to be able to cultivate these regenerative systems. And, Raquel mentioned early on that Indigenous entrepreneurs really are the backbone of economies. And so looking at that and looking at our communities, I think it's really important to sort of sit in that for a moment and just remind yourself that what you're doing really is big and really is necessary. There's my slide again. And then again, just this reminder that, we're really trying to look at that transition. And the way that we do that is we start by looking at where we are. So if you were to take a moment and just kind of look at this and sort of see where you feel yourself fitting in. One of the things I asked Raquel to do was send out some questions about this, how are people feeling right now and what kinds of things are they doing to cope? And some of the responses were that people were having difficulties. So I just want to encourage you to, take a look at this area, sort of just see where you see yourself at. If you feel like things are going great, you're feeling healthy, you're feeling like things are the way that they're supposed to be, that's good. Keep doing what you're doing. If you're noticing that, sometimes things are distressing, and there are times when it's going to be normal for things to be distressing, like if you're taking a test or maybe you're, having to do, say, a presentation or something like that, you might feel a little bit more distressed. Now, if you're noticing that there's more moderate distress and that's becoming more of a daily thing, then I would say that's an indicator to maybe look at what other things could you be doing to help yourself move down into those lower levels rather than moving up to the higher level. And then the red is really just like where things are severe, things are difficult. There's depression, there's anxiety, there's PTSD. And I really just want to encourage you to consider engaging in counseling. I know that there's a lot more people talking about the benefits of counseling, people talking about, why they chose to go to counseling. So there's a ton of information about counseling and its benefits. But, if you're noticing that things are a challenge for you, please reach out. There's a lot of counselors out there. My practice works in the state of Arizona. We work virtually. And there's other practice owners that are also amazing and wonderful. And I think we have a couple of them on the call today, as well as other practitioners that are really aware of some of the transitions and challenges that we as Indigenous people face. And so I just kind of want to put that out there for you to consider. And you can always reach out to me. I'm always happy to help connect people to the right space and place if that's something you need. Resilience is a skill. It's a practice. It's not something that you just wake up with one day. It's definitely something that is honed over time, and focusing on these pivotal pillars really is going to help you to begin to increase your resiliency and increase your ability to tolerate stressful and hard things. So how do we do that, right? So I'm like lecturing at you, talking about all these things, and you're like, okay, get to the good part. Like, how do we identify a goal? Well, if you think about that little slide that I just gave you with that continuum, if you notice maybe, things are a little bit stressful for you day to day, what kind of a goal makes sense for you to create? if you're noticing that you didn't get good sleep last night, what were the contributors? Was it something that you can change a little bit? Is it that you stayed up late watching TV, or maybe you stayed up late working or doing something like that? It's like, okay, well, how can you make time in your schedule or make small adjustments to increase the amount of time that you're sleeping? If the issue is more that I tried to go to sleep and couldn't go to sleep, then kind of doing a little bit of a deeper dive into why. And really what you want to do is look at common daily habits and see where there's an opportunity to improve. If physical activity maybe is lacking right now, what are the things that you can do? Can you get up once an hour and stretch? Can you go walk around? If it's too cold to go outside, can you walk around in your house? Can you do some loops in there? Can you do you have access to the internet? Can you do internet yoga? Can you do, there's really a lot of things out there for us to try and do. Or just like my dad goes outside and like starts cleaning the yard and picking up after the dogs. And I have a dog. Here she comes, she's running this way. So that's kind of really one of my little like daily life hacks, is taking my dog out for walks. And it just kind of gets me in a different space and really helps me to, get a little bit of physical activity every day, and also be deliberate about what I'm doing and where I am, and take a break from maybe some of the bigger things. The third piece of it is tracking what you're doing, whether that's writing it on a Post-it, putting it on your phone. There's a lot of great habit trackers out there. I think I saw that Change Lab also had some organization and planning. I watched a little bit of that, and she kind of shared like there's whole programs and applications for that. So, you can kind of go as complicated as you want, but really when you think about it, it's just tracking helps you to, improve, because what you focus on is going to change. If you're paying attention to something and you're making it a goal and you're being mindful about it, there is going to be improvement over time, because it's something that you're actively working on. Some examples of common daily habits and some things that you could do, and starting small is great. You don't have to start with the biggest thing, and you don't have to start, like a lot of times people will be like, oh, I'm going to go run a 5K. And it's like, okay, well, start by walking, start by walking 5 minutes a day. And then when that's comfortable, you move it up a little bit, 7.5 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, right? But it's really about starting with these little small things. And my therapist calls it microdosing, where you're starting with these little tiny things that add up to big things at the end. So stretching for 1 minute, writing something down each day that you're grateful for, scheduling a meeting, like I said, the last one, which is one of my favorites, walking your dog or making some tea. These are all things. And I think we can all think of things that we like to do or that we enjoy doing and just kind of forget to do. So would you all mind putting in the chat something that you do every day? Because I think there's probably going to be a lot more things than what I have listed. Oh, I'm reading the chat. People are saying it was really windy and that's what kept them awake. Deadlines. Yes, habit stacking. Absolutely. Okay, so just take a moment. Oh, sound bowl and stretching. That sounds really nice, Dana. Beading, walk, drink water, take breaks. Hey, that's great. Wash dishes. Yes, right. Plus it's like a double win. Then your dishes are clean and then you've washed them. Stretching. Absolutely. Lift weights, journal planner. Yep. Self-affirmations. Gratitude every morning. Love it. Cold shower and journaling. Oh, you're brave. Cold shower right now. But yes, read a book. Yes, books. I love books. Journal. Listen to a beautiful chorus. Making the bed every morning. Oh, that's great, Naomi. That was like one of my grandma's life hacks. She was always like, make your bed and put your face on every morning. Works. Morning movement, walking, yoga, running, and then reading before getting online. That's perfect. Oh, that's another one, right? Reducing screen time. I was just reading something and it said like 1 in 8 people has problems with the internet. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds really normal these days. But like reducing your screen time, especially if you spend a ton of time on the screen, taking a moment, taking a break, getting some different things. Desiree says crafting, singing with music, walking, visiting with family, networking with others. Absolutely, all great things. Shayna says physical activity, run, strength, and listening to podcasts. Yes. Oh, Sahar says color code closet, like that. Valerie, reading. Yes. Change labs. Looks like Holly's picture. I like to look up new cooking recipes every day. Carletta, hey Letta, running while listening to Audible, actually fast walking, jogging. Running is not acceptable to me anymore. That's funny. Same. Stretching, running, and staying away from social media until it's time to get to work. That was Tim. Awesome. So yeah, so lots of stuff in the chat, right? Like there's a ton of things that you can do. And the more you do these things, the more you add these doses of these little things in, the better you're going to feel. And it seems really simple, but it's always the thing that we forget, like it's always the first thing to go. When we have a to-do list that's 40 miles long, the thing that often doesn't make the list is taking care of myself. And so I'm just here to encourage you to put that in the list and move it up a little bit higher, right? Like try to get it to the top. I get that it's not always going to make it to the top, but it definitely needs to be on there. And it definitely needs to be something that you actively cultivate, looks like I had resilience in there twice. Here we go. My little pillar reminder again. And so if you think about it, all of the things that you put in the chat fall into one of these 4 categories. Physical activity, nutrition, someone mentioned looking at recipes, stress management, all of that stuff. So we're getting close to, we have about half an hour left, I think, in our time today. And I think I had made about 50 slides. And so this is that we're getting down to the end. So we've got only a few more slides to go. But this is a quote I just wanted to share with you all. When I was in graduate school, one of my coworkers gave me this, or one of my classmates gave me this, and I just always love it. And I feel like it just really fits for so many of the things that we're doing in life. And sometimes fear can really get in the way of us moving through what we need to move through to get to that great space and place. Again, just that reminder that it's possible for us to manage our exposure to stress and trauma without internalizing it. I'm not going to talk too much about EMDR, but I do want to say one of the things that I love about it and encourage you all to Google it. It's EMDR. It stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's a really great trauma resolution therapy. There are other therapies too that work great, but that one just happens to be my favorite. One of the things that it does is it just helps your body to move through the things that have happened before. But for the purposes of this presentation, I really just wanted to talk about, managing stress and also understanding that there are things that we can do to help get through trauma if those things have happened to you. As far as goal setting, we kind of talked about like just the microdosing of the things, right? But when we look at goal setting, we also have 3 tiers, and this actually comes from EMDR. And so we have the past, right? Like some of our goals are going to be informed from things that have happened before us. Some of the things are going to come from today. And then there's also a big component of the future, because again, we're building things that are going to exist into the future. And we come from people who are really excellent at doing that, great at visioning. I mean, you think about, Indigenous farmers and how we have to plan, and, all of this stuff comes from our histories and our communities. There's a lot of different kinds of goal setting. We talked about like daily goal setting, there's weekly goal setting, there's monthly. So it just kind of expands out, right? there's annual. And this was a big transitionary point for me as an entrepreneur. In the beginning, I was focused mostly on daily. I was like, okay, what's my schedule for today? What am I going to do? How am I going to get there? And then working with my business mentor and working with other folks, it was clear that I had to start getting a little bit more broader about my goals and my plans, looking at monthly and then moving to annual, and then moving out further even from there, because a lot of our industry as business owners, there really focuses on the future, and focuses on those next things that are coming. And then for us, looking at things multi-generationally, looking at what does that mean for other generations? What does that mean for my family, for my friends, for my community? And so when we're setting these goals, starting with the small things, but also kind of keeping in mind that we are going to transition over time, and that there are other people who are doing these things that we can learn from. And again, focusing on that multi-generational piece, right? Because there is a lot of equity in our community. There's a lot of cultural wealth. There's a lot of sharing. I talked a little bit about sort of that process of, Navajo weaving, and how there's all these pieces of it, right? And you become a Navajo weaver by being taught by other weavers. And so if you think about that, entrepreneurship is also a process where we engage with mentorship, change labs, as well as other entities and supportive processes where we get that connection and that support to learn how to do these things. And that's important. Included a little quote from one of my favorite authors. I feel like just sums it up greatly. We think it's our own choice, our path, and then we discover we're walking an ancient path set by our ancestors. There's some little slides here about different kinds of self-care. And again, we talked about it. One area that we talked about that I didn't very specifically point out was like spiritual self-care, right? But that's something that we absolutely do. Spending time alone, meditation, yoga, connection, nature, journaling, sacred spaces, connecting to, our elders, our community. All of those things are really important too. Oh yeah, someone said in the chat. Oh yes, yes, the 7 circles, Indigenous teachings for living well. Yeah, absolutely. Thosh and his partner wrote that book, and it's amazing. I just actually got gifted it like a week ago, so I just started reading it, but it's a really good book. It is, and it's got so much information, so I definitely second that recommendation. Other ways to win at well-being, connecting, paying attention to those simple things. Keep learning. I mean, you're obviously all here, you're learning, you're actively engaging in the process, being active, moving your body. And then I love how it says in there, like, move your mood. Very often, when I go exercise or work out or go take my dog for a walk, I mean, probably 99% of the time, I feel better when I'm finished than I did when I started. So I think that's always, keep the end in mind sometimes. This one's more information, again, little dog. And some of the things we talked about here are other things that you can do. And these are all things that were in the chat. So again, community and collective knowledge, the answers are always there, right? And then this just has some pictures of some things that I do that I mentioned. So like walking my dog is like one of my favorite activities. And here she is looking cute and like begging for something, food or a walk. Those are like her 2 favorite things. And then quilting and sewing, like I love all the things tactile. So really just coming down to it, the tips and to-dos. Again, like we said early on, just cultivating it, actively cultivating where you are going and looking at improving your resilience. And knowing that, that you have this collective community to rely on, and that there are going to be barriers and challenges, and that you can really, plan for some of these things and work through the unforeseen. So I just kind of wanted to open it up and see if we have any questions. We have a little bit of time left. I'm not sure what would be helpful, maybe if people raise their hands. Any questions or any thoughts or ideas? Anybody want to jump in and share?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah.
On coping skills and resiliency.
Mm-hmm.
Like as an entrepreneur, you don't have good days. You have some days where you're really working hard, nothing seems to be happening. So you got to have, well, the resiliency to get through that. But what kind of coping skills would you recommend, or maybe thoughts about that, to where you can get past that? It's going to be okay. I mean, as Indigenous people, we have that. Natives, we have that strong resiliency already built into us, and we have to remember that as entrepreneurs, that's there. But what would you recommend? What were your thoughts on that?
So you're saying that there are going to be days that are going to be difficult?
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, because everyone on here is a cohort, we're an entrepreneur, we're coaches. So I want to hear your thoughts on that. And I know you're an entrepreneur too, so you got people you work with down there in Phoenix, right? Is that where you're at? Okay.
Yeah. I will say that one of the things that I learned that really fundamentally helped me was to expect that things are going to be difficult periodically, rather than to expect that things are going to be easy, to expect that things are going to be difficult, and to always be mindful of finding a way, and that sometimes it's going to take multiple tries and effort to find the way that's going to work for you. Because I think if we have this expectation that everything's going to go easy and it's going to be smooth sailing, I think we're setting ourselves up for failure. I think that's like what in my industry we called an irrational belief. If we're using cognitive behavioral therapy, like if we just think, oh, it's going to be easy, everything's going to work out, then we're setting ourselves up for disappointment and frustration. And so I think being realistic about the fact that things take time is also another piece of it, which is where I was saying, like, we have to understand that, our ancestors were planners. They knew when you put a seed in the ground that seed was not going to sprout overnight. And it's the same thing, I think, with entrepreneurship. When I do something, when I put something into place, it might be a long time before I see that come to fruition. It doesn't often come to fruition in my timeline, right? What I want and what I aspire to doesn't always happen as quickly or as easily as I wish it would. Now, there are going to be times where you're going to get like a lucky break, or things are going to be easy, or things are going to smoothly go through things. And when you have those times, I would say celebrate them, enjoy them. And that's the goal, right? That's always the goal. Like I shared the example of like how I'm working on a payroll situation I have right now, right? The goal is to increase our capacity to pay our contractors in a way that is not so labor intensive for me, right? In a way that either my practice assistant or one of my other employees can maybe supervise that process, right? But right now, the system that we have has worked until it stopped working, right? And sometimes that happens as an entrepreneur. You'll have a system in place and you're like, I got it. I know how I'm doing this. I figured out my QuickBooks. I figured out this, and then it'll stop working. And it's not that you did it wrong. It's that the system needs to change. And so I think that's important too, is understanding that there are going to be times, and it never happens when it's convenient. I feel like it never happens when it's convenient, right? It always happens at an off time. I see people nodding like, oh yeah. Can anybody relate to that? Like it just happening and you're like, really? Why now?
I think to your point, Jordanna, too, it's like, it's also a realization at that point of, I see some things in the chat of like managing expectations, to like taking a different perspective of things like that. But I think it's also too like a point that you come into where it's asking for help. And that's a big thing for a lot of individuals, is like, it's that point where asking for help, however it's been communicated in the past, or the pre-misconceptions about asking for help and the myths around it, that a lot of it is associated with weakness, or the fact that you couldn't do it by yourself. And then as entrepreneurs who like go through this, and they're, an entrepreneur is a person who is a leader, is a person who is a go-getter, who can do all this stuff by themselves. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs, when they go through this process, they find a lot of things that, they can't do that by themselves. And that's okay, because again, as you pointed out in your presentation, we're only one person. We only have so much time. And it's reaching out for help at those pivotal moments of where you're like, yep, I really need to go and like ask somebody else to do this for me, because the system isn't working. It's creating more stress onto me. And I need to start figuring out like what other resources and things that are out there that can help me better help other people, or better help the people that I want to provide for.
Absolutely. I think that's it. I think that's really critical. And I think the thing too is understanding that asking for help is actually a strength, right? Yeah. Because I think a lot of times and a lot of times we've been doing things, because entrepreneurs, in my experience, are people who are the people that get tasked to do the hard things. We're the ones that do the hard things in our family and our communities. We're the ones that are like, oh, if you want something done, ask them, right? And there's always this joke about, if you want something done, ask a busy person, right? And so that happens, right? It's like, we're already busy, and then people are like, hey, can you join this committee? Or hey, could you be in charge of this? Or hey, can you take this over? And it's like, no. That's another skill, right? Is to being able to say no. And sometimes we don't do that. We don't say no. We say yes or maybe, and I mean, but saying no is also a strength, because you can't say yes to everything, and again, it's that thing of, there's only one you, and if you have this vision and you have this dream and things are important to you, if you're the one cultivating it and you're the one growing it, you're the farmer, the waterer, the weeder. You're all of those things. But at the end of the day, are you also taking time to take a break for yourself? And are you the best weeder, or is there someone else that you could tap to help you? Are you the best planter? Or is really your strength plotting out the farm and cultivating the seeds and getting the interest and the motivation of a community, right? Because I think that's part of entrepreneurship, is moving from it's me to that transition, which was a big transition that I just made probably in the last year, where I started calling myself a CEO versus calling myself an owner, or I would just say therapist / group practice owner. I am a group practice owner, but a CEO has all the hats, right? And a CEO is recognized, and it's not so much for Indian country, like Indian country doesn't care if I'm a CEO or not, but the outside world treats me different when they see CEO after my name. And that's really what I am. I'm responsible for the payroll of my employees. I'm responsible for the health and well-being of several hundred patients, and so also looking at what is the mantle of responsibility that we carry, and what does it really mean? Because I think sometimes we undersell ourselves, and we're afraid to take that mantle because, what might happen if we wear that mantle, right? But really, you've been wearing it all along. You just didn't call it that, you just called it something else. But I think it's also that piece of like having the confidence, right? Like, it's like, well, you've been doing this for a long time. And I don't know about you all, but like, I'm not the first entrepreneur from my family. My grandmother was an entrepreneur. We sold cupcakes so that I could get running shoes. That was like how I grew up. Like, if you want something, you work for it. Right. So I grew up working. I was in middle school. I would go to cross country practice. And then afterwards I go home, get my little tray of cupcakes, go down to the BIA right before it closed, sell cupcakes, put all of our coins in a jar, and she'd say, okay, we're going to buy this for meat, and then we're going to buy this for you. She'll put this aside for your shoes. You got a field trip on Saturday. You know, that was how I grew up, right? My grandma didn't have a sign. She didn't have a shop. We had a cardboard box, right? So that's entrepreneurship, you know, but that's not what we think of when we think of entrepreneurship. So a lot of you are already doing all these things. It's just, what does it look like and how does it look different? So I'm going to go take a look at the chat. Let's see. Question: how would you de-stress yourself from financial stress? Oh gosh, I've been there. You know, there are stages of entrepreneurship. You know, I worked for free for my business for probably longer than I should have, caused some problems. And my business mentor, when he found out I was doing that, because I was worried, I always wanted to have money in the bank to make sure I could pay for everything. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to take the bare minimum, you know, I'm just going to make minimum wage, you know, but there was a lot of times where I was working and I wasn't paying myself, and it was hard. But the other thing I realized is I also had to value my time, and I also had to ask people for help. And so that was a big step for me, is when you're running a business, you need capital, right? You need money to do the things you need to do. And it's hard to think about things like debt, and it's hard to think about projections. It's hard to think about all of those things that come with running a business. But that's where folks like Change Labs comes in, New Mexico Community Capital. These people, that's their expertise, right? And a lot of times we're ashamed, or we're afraid, or we're embarrassed, and or maybe we just don't know. Because I can tell you, I didn't know until I've walked through these different steps. I didn't know how to walk through them. And thankfully there were people there, because I think it's because I'm super chatty and I just like talk to people. I'm like, hey, what do you do? You know, and they're like, I do this. And I'm like, oh, that's a thing. Like, you know, and then I'm like, oh, can you help me with this? You know, so I would say de-stressing myself is finding help. You know, who can help you if you have financial stress? Is it personal financial stress? Is it business financial stress? Is it both? Because a lot of times they go hand in hand. You know, there's classes you can take, there's books you can read, there's people who can help you. And I think coming up with a plan. Oh, go ahead, Delphina. I just saw you raise your hand.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your talk and discussion. I think as in Indian country alone, in our culture and your mindset, I think is that Joe Butt. So you kind of do that underestimating your people. And I'm trying to value my services right now. And it's really hard to, and then you're like trying not to do it for free too. I'm kind of in that situation. And then you think, okay, if I capture them at this price point, but then they see all the hard work I'm doing for them, maybe I can increase the rate the following 6 months or 9 months or 12 months from now. But I think overall, it's that Joe Butt that kind of it's hard, you know, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to underestimate my value, but I think my grandma and my grandpa's teaching on that. It's hard because I do remember them doing the crops and corns, but they didn't sell it. They would just, you know, we would be over there taking the corn down, and then we give them to our neighbors. And then, you know, we just kind of barter in that sense. But I feel like that's really kind of our barrier too, is that word Joe Butt is in our vocabulary. So if you're raised that way, it's hard to say what you're worth, your value. So.
Yeah, that's a really insightful and helpful thing to bring to the table. So thank you for bringing that up for us, because I definitely understand that. And I can say that the way that I have come to peace with that is to meet it in the middle. And I'll tell you how I did that. So one of the things I do with my practice is everybody that I hire, I ask them if they're willing to make a commitment to offer 20% of their work at low or no cost. Because for me, I didn't want to price myself out of my population. There and the work that I do, there are a lot of places and spaces that charge a lot more than we charge. You know, they charge hundreds of dollars per hour. And one of the things that always bothered me was, I get that, I get why they do that, I get that's their imperative, but for me, I had that same inclination. Like, I remember buying a gumball machine when I was a kid, and I was so excited. I put it in front of the house. All my friends came over and put coins in, and I was like, yes, I'm rich. And then my grandmother saw me counting all my coins and made me go give them all back. And I was like devastated. And I was like, why? I made all this money. And she's like, you're supposed to share. You're not supposed to, like, you know, take advantage of your friends. But it was like that learning, right? That like cultural learning. Like, she was like, you know, you have been given this gift and now you're over here trying to take advantage of your friends. But then I was like, okay, well, there's a difference between sharing and giving. And there's a difference between, I have something that I offer and I need to make a living. Right? And those are different things. And sometimes they get intermingled. But how can you do what you're doing? Where can you find, you know, an exception or a way that you can do both? You know, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both, because it's your creation, it's your business, it's your service. And so that was how I found a way to do both. And it wasn't just on me. I lean on my community. I lean on the people that I employ to say, how can we do this together? Because we value this. And the reason it works is because we all value social justice. We value our time and we value other people's time. And we also acknowledge that it's really important for us to share. And I feel like what that has done for the business is it's created more opportunities for more business. Because what happens is those people that we see, because we slide all the way down to $22 an hour. And for a lot of our people that do that, that's a lot of money. And some people we see for free, for no cost to them, for a certain amount of sessions. Those people always pay us. You know, they always pay us, they make the commitment. And the other thing is those people send us other people. So it generates more, you know, more income for us. It generates more referrals. And also, you know, it goes back to that community, right? Honoring community and offering something that is not just for the sole purpose of profit. Also, it's created opportunities, because the city that I live in and work in right now, I talk about that. And I've talked about how hard that is as a healthcare business owner to not get that money, because it does show up in our books, right? And we're like, okay, if 20% of our services are not bringing in as much as our other services, the other 80% has to offset for that some way. But we have opportunities, and one of the opportunities, we were asked by the city to apply for a grant that will cover those costs. You know, and the opportunity came from having those conversations and from doing the work. So I think that's where we also have to understand that the work that we're doing is generational work, and we have to value our work. And I'm not saying that it's always going to be that way, because I didn't do it because I thought somebody would help us cover the services. We did it because that's my value, because that's how I was raised, right? So I definitely understand that. Anybody else? We've got a few more minutes, so I feel like these are good conversations and questions. And I just wanted to check in. It's total skill to work through the social entrepreneur spirit. Yes. This is why I love Change Labs. We can discuss challenges from each other, being Native. Yeah. Oh, and thanks for sharing our socials. Kara said it's a learning process to mold our business practice into the non-Native economy we're participating in while honoring our values. Yes, it is. It is a challenge, but who better to do it than us, right? And the fact that we have each other and we have these experiences. I mean, like I said, like I came to that after a lot of struggle and frustration. Like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? You know, and so you guys are going to come up with that. That's why I said, like, entrepreneurs, especially Indigenous entrepreneurs, were innovative. we can do things that other people can't do because of where we came from. And I think that's really important to acknowledge and to lean on. You guys can do things that other people can't do because other people have not had to live the lives that you've had to live. So if anyone can be successful, it's you all. And sometimes we forget that, or maybe we didn't get told that, or maybe we don't believe it. But then we're doing it, and we're doing it, and we're doing it, and we're doing it. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves, and we have to believe reality, right? We have to believe it. And if you have trouble believing, you can email me and I'll be like, you got it. You know, like I will be your cheerleader. Or I will tell you, oh, yep, been there. That's hard, you know. So we got about 5 more minutes. Just wanted to offer it out there. Anybody else got any feedback or thoughts or a question?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I recently learned about subconscious reprogramming.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you would recommend?
Honestly, I don't know too much about it, so I wouldn't. I mean, I've heard of, I know what the subconscious is, and I know a little bit about it, but I don't know what you mean by like reprogramming. Are you talking about like mantras, or is this some like?
For instance, our brain works like a thermostat.
Mm-hmm.
We try something new, our brain tries to bring us back to our comfort zone, the way life was, like what some of us go through as entrepreneurs. We try something new in our business, and from the first couple months, it's mind-boggling. It's scary, or we go through different emotions. And reality is that the subconscious mind, our thermostat, is kicking in, telling us to go back the way life was. Now, if we would reprogram our minds to our new life, our new mindset, that would help in a way. So that's been helping with me. For instance, I started a jewelry business. I started selling stock, or getting into crypto and stock market, forex trading, and I started classes at NAU. I'm going after my master's now. I do my website. I take orders. I'm also a teacher, and it's all new to me. So the mind, the basis of it, when I pre-program my mind, I said, this is life here. Not to mention, I'm also a father to 5 kids. I have 2 older kids in Phoenix living there, which are helping. I have 3 younger boys. So they're constantly going. You know, I come to believe that 8 to 5 is a myth. I truly believe that job. There's no such thing. As soon as you go to sleep, to wake up. So my daily tasks is quite busy if you think about it. There's a lot of meditation involved, and to reprogram the mind that this is life, it helps. It helped me, for instance. Just wanted to share that. It helps. I didn't learn it all at once. I didn't pick up at once. I did a lot of reading, self-help. And when I turned 40, that's when I started changing my life around. I'm now 44. Wow. I'm 44. They just hit me. But that's why I thought that maybe you would know more about it. Subconscious reprogramming.
Well, I think really what you're talking about is the way that you conceptualize what you're doing and accepting it, right? That the beliefs that you had about what was reality for you, there was a transition from that to where you are now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that's that change process, right?
Yes.
When you're in the middle of a transition, a lot of times you don't know you're in the transition until it's over. And as entrepreneurs, we can simultaneously be in many transitions at the same time. And I think sometimes that's what is also a challenge, is we can have a lot of transitionings happening at the same time. Because not only are we entrepreneurs, but you mentioned these hats that you're wearing, right? You're a dad, you're making the jewelry, you're going to school, you got the website. I mean, and each one of those things has its own set of skills, responsibilities, and tasks, right?
Yes.
And so part of it is, like, it sounds like you said to yourself, this is just what it is, right? Work is not black and white, work is gray.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, yes, it's definitely part of the process. So, all right. Well, I think we are at the end of our time. And thank you so much again to Change Labs and all of you for showing up today. And, like I said, lean on each other and reach out, get support, and definitely keep your mental health and your wellness on the top of the list. It may not always be number one, but push it up towards the top. Don't drop it off the list.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jordanna. There are a few more comments in the chat. I can read them over. We have Sasha. She said, my mom usually says, I wish I could win the lottery so I can make everything easier. And then we have Cecilia. She says, wonderful presentation. Cecilia is one of our program directors. She directs the incubator program. And then we had Tim. I almost said Change Labs and Tim at the same time. Sorry, Tim. Tim, he's also with Change Labs. He's one of our great coaches we have. He's saying thank you and great information and resources. And then really everyone is really being really grateful. And thank you so much for agreeing to be here with us and present with us today, all of our entrepreneurs and our cohort members here in Jordanna. I was really excited to get this program, this workshop scheduled with you. And I was really happy to hear when you had the availability to present for us. And I thought that it would be a lot, really motivating for our cohort members that are online, and then the rest of our entrepreneurs and business owners that are here with us as well. I am going to share my screen one more time. If anyone has any questions on today's presentation or any information that was presented here, if you have want any more information from Jordanna's company, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is here, raquel@nativestartup.org. And I will be announcing our workshops for March. We have 2 coming up in March again, very, very soon. So keep a lookout on our socials and our website for when that's posted, and you can get yourself registered for that as well. So that's all I have for today. I hope everyone's traveling safe. I know the weather is really, really intense back at home. I'm in Phoenix right now, and it's just blue skies, so I'm not really too worried right now, but I hope everyone keeps safe the rest of this week and throughout the rest of the weather that's coming up in the next couple of days. And Jordanna, I will thank you once again, and that's all I have.
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you guys. Have a good day.